Today is April 9th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today out of the Big Book, we are going to be reading Personal Stories Part 2, They Stopped in Time, Story Number 2, Fear of Fear. We're actually going to be finishing that story by reading pages 293 through 295. And the 12 and 12, we are going to continue our journey through Step 12. By reading page 108. Hope you all are doing well today. Life over here is pretty good. Let's get to the good stuff. Alright, my friends. So if you recall from yesterday's reading, our narrator here, who was at first going to the AA meetings for her husband, somebody, a mutual friend, kind of carries on a conversation with her. And the more she says, the more I believe that she sees right through our narrator. And says, "Oh, so you're a martyr for your family, right?" Boy, that ticked off the narrator. But sure enough, it got a seed planted because she starts to really examine her own drinking, and it is unmanageable. She's filled with fear, says right here. "I felt a fear coming into my life and I couldn't cope with it. I got so that I hid quite a bit of time, wouldn't answer the phone, stayed by myself as much as I could. I noticed that I was avoiding all of my social friends except for my bridge club. I couldn't keep up with many of my other friends, and I wouldn't go to anyone's house unless I knew that they drank as heavily as I did." So we can see here that she has a life filled with fear, and she's turned to the drink quite a bit. And she says it's surprising how we think we fool everybody in our drinking. So our narrator here, last thing we read yesterday is our narrator here, she would try to stop on her own and she couldn't. Just like so many others before her. And she'd say a prayer right here, "Dear God, get me out of this one and I'll never do it again." But she would follow it up and say, "God, don't pay any attention to me. You know I'll do it tomorrow. The very same thing." So talking about being self-aware and acknowledging that this disease has her. So we are going to finish the story today by reading 293 through 295. "I used to make excuses to try to get George off the wagon. I'd get so fed up with drinking all alone and bearing the burden of guilt all by myself that I'd egg him on to drink, to get started again. Then I'd fight with him because he had started, and the whole merry-go-round would be on again. And he, poor dear, didn't know what was going on. He used to wonder, when he'd spot one of my bottles around the house, just how he could have overlooked that particular bottle. I myself didn't know all the places that I'd had them hidden. We have only been in AA for a few years, but now we're trying to make up for lost time. 27 years of confusion is what my early married life was. Now the picture's changed completely. We have faith in each other, trust in each other, and understanding. AA has given us that. It has taught me so many things. It's changed my thinking entirely about everything I do. I can't afford resentments against anyone because they are the buildup of another drink. I must live and let live. And think. That one important word means so much to me. My life was always act and react. I never stopped to think. I just didn't give a whoop about myself or anyone else. I try to live our program as it has been outlined to me, one day at a time. I try to live today so that tomorrow I won't be ashamed when I wake up in the morning. In the old days, I hated to wake up and look back at what last night had been like. I never could face it the next morning, unless I had some rosy picture of what was going to happen that day. I wouldn't even feel like getting up in the morning at all. It wasn't really living. Now, I feel so very grateful not only for my sobriety, which I try to maintain day by day, but I am grateful also for the ability to help other people. I never thought I could be useful to anyone except my husband and my children and perhaps a few friends. But AA has shown me that I can help other alcoholics. Many of my neighbors devoted time to volunteer work. There was one woman especially, and I'd watch her from my window every morning, leaving faithfully to go to the hospital in the neighborhood. I said to her one day when I met her on the street, "What sort of volunteer work do you do?" She told me. It was simple. I could have done it easily. She said, "Why don't you do it too?" I said, "I'd love to." She said, "Suppose I put your name down as a volunteer, even if you can only give 1 or 2 days?" But then I thought, well, now wait. How will I feel next Tuesday? How will I feel next Friday if I make it a Friday? How will I feel next Saturday morning? I never knew. I was afraid to set even one day. I could never be sure I'd have a clear head and hands that were willing to do some work. So I never did any volunteer work. And I felt depleted, whipped. I had the time. I certainly had the capability, but I never did a thing. I am trying now, each day, to make up for all those selfish, thoughtless, foolish things I did in my drinking days. I hope that I never forget to be grateful. Alright, some great stuff there. Can't wait to come back to that in just a second. Alright, my friends, so if you recall from yesterday's reading, we are continuing our journey through step 12, which is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. And we've been outlining yesterday the 12 steps here, all right, leading up to step number 12, the final step here. These are lifetime steps, the last 3 for sure. We had recapped all the way up to step 5 yesterday, so we are going to continue that on page 108. We knew we would have to quit the deadly business of living alone with our conflicts, and in honesty, confide these to God and another human being. At step 6, many of us balked, for the practical reason that we did not wish to have all our defects of character removed, because we still love some of them too much. Yet we knew we had to make a settlement with the fundamental principle of step 6. So we decided that while we still had some flaws of character that we could not yet relinquish, we ought nevertheless to quit our stubborn, rebellious hanging on to them. We said to ourselves, "This I cannot do today, perhaps, but I can stop crying out, 'No, never.'" Then, in step 6, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings, such as He could or would under the conditions of the day we asked. In step 8, we continued our house cleaning, for we saw that we were not only in the conflict with ourselves, but also with the people and situations in the world in which we lived. We had to begin to make our peace, and so we listed the people that we had harmed and became willing to set things right. We followed this up in step 9 by making direct amends to those concerned, except when it would injure them or other people. By this time, at step 10, we had begun to get a basis for daily living, and we keenly realized that we would need to continue taking personal inventory, and that when we were in the wrong, we ought to admit it promptly. In step 11, we saw that if a higher power had restored us to sanity and had enabled us to live in some peace of mind in a sorely troubled world, then such a higher power was worth knowing better, by as direct contact as possible. The persistent use of meditation and prayer, we found, did open the channel, so that where there had been a trickle, there now was a river which led to the sure power and safe guidance from God, as we were increasingly better able to understand Him. All right, my friends, so we will stop there in today's reading. Great summary of our steps here on page 108, leading up to the final step, step 12, which is a great 2-part step. So going back to the big book real fast, pretty interesting ending here and very honest ending to this story, and I really like that. On page 293, it has changed my thinking entirely about everything I do. I can't afford resentments against anyone because they are a buildup of another drunk. And I know in my life that's true. Anytime I have a resentment towards anyone, including myself, that's a recipe for disaster. When I start refilling that anger, I start getting angrier and angrier. It's not worth it. So these resentments, they need to be dealt with, and these 12 steps do such an amazing job getting rid of that anger. And it might not change the other person, but it'll change me. Praying about these things. And I love this line here further down on 293. I try to live today so that tomorrow I won't be ashamed when I wake up in the morning. I heard somebody say one time, how do you want to build your self-esteem? Do things that build your self-esteem. One thing that helps me is being kind to others. It makes me feel better. Again, I don't do it for that reason. I try to do it because it's the right thing to do. But sure enough, in turn, I feel better. And that kind of leads into one of the last things Our Lady says here. She says she meets somebody who volunteers all the time, and that person really must have stood out to her for her to mention her in this last, for our narrator to mention her in this, or second to last paragraph of her testimony. She oftentimes said no to volunteer work. But the very last paragraph says, I am trying now, each day, to make up for all those selfish, thoughtless, foolish things that I did in my drinking days. I love the last line. I hope I never forget to be grateful. Gratitude's been my word of the year for sure. I hope it's my word every year. I have so much to be grateful for. So in the second to last paragraph, she says that she said no so many times to helping others. And again, that first line in the last paragraph, I am trying now. We're trying now. We can't change the past, but we certainly can learn from our mistakes. And we've been given another day. Today is April 9th. If we woke up today, we have another opportunity. We have right here and right now to be sober. We can choose that today. And if we are sober, we're a miracle. If we're alive today, we still have a chance to make a difference. I love that line. I'm trying now each day to make up for all those selfish, thoughtless, foolish things I did in my drinking days. I hope I never forget to be grateful. So with all that, my friends, I hope you all have a great day. I don't speak on behalf of AA or any other sector or anything like that. I am just a grateful friend in recovery and grateful that you're here with me. Hope you all have a good one. And if we're given another set of 24 hours, I am looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.